So I frequently get comments either assuming I should support banning the free practice of religion, or asking what I think the solution should be, if not that. While I do understand that it's a pretty logical conclusion that I should want to ban something I repeatedly speak about as a societal evil, as well as the fact that some anti-theists do feel this way, I personally think banning religion would not only be unethical, but ineffective. Let's talk about it. So before discussing my personal ideas for solutions, I'm going to go into some of the reasons I don't see banning religion as a productive solution. I will also note, while I will touch on some of the specific harms religion causes throughout this video, that's not its main purpose. If you want a more comprehensive overview of that topic, I'll link a few previous videos on the subject below. The most glaring and obvious issue with banning religion is that it's an ethical nightmare and thought crime. Personally, I don't think the act of holding any specific belief should ever be criminalized, even for extremist groups or the like. Not only does this create a level of control from the government that's both unenforceable and very susceptible to corruption or discrimination, but it's also generally ineffective. There's no real way to actually regulate what someone's beliefs are. All it can do is force people to keep quiet about it. While personally I do think religious beliefs should be kept private, this as a solution does not actually decrease religiosity, only free speech. It's giving nothing of substance to convince people that their beliefs are fundamentally untrue or aid in deconstruction. The beliefs will simply be held silently. Aside from this, if you've seen either my W.K. Clifford video or my Problems with Religion video, I go on to discuss the concept of private beliefs. Even in situations in which a belief is not publicly shared, it still influences the actions of the person who holds it. Someone may never share with anyone that they're a Muslim, but will still abstain from pork and alcohol. Someone may never mention that they're Catholic, but still neglect to use contraception. Part of my problem with religion is the way that it influences people to make choices they may not have made otherwise, and that problem would still be present in a society in which religion is no longer allowed. You can simply say you don't like pork, or that birth control gives you bad side effects. Even in cases of actually harmful actions such as homophobia or discrimination, it's already common for people to deny the motivations behind discriminatory choices. This wouldn't change simply because of religion being banned, as those beliefs would still be held and as such inform the person's actions. Someone could still disown their queer child and simply cite another reason for doing as such. Of course, I don't think people should be forced to partake in these things either. Like I already stated, my issue here is not that it's bad to avoid birth control or pork, especially considering I'm a vegetarian, but rather that the component of informed choices is removed by the influence of religion. So I don't believe forcing people to do these things is acceptable either. In some cases, I actually believe banning religion would strengthen the beliefs of some religious communities, such as Jehovah's Witnesses, who have their religion being banned as an actual part of prophecy. You can easily find videos produced by Watchtower that show JWs hiding in bunkers as the cops try and break in and arrest them for believing in God.
I'm so glad you guys made it safely.
It's getting bad out there now.
Chris, were you able to check on all of the other groups?
Yes, Brother Brown, I took account of each group.
Thank you.
So you've been visiting each group, even with all that's going on out there?
Yes, but there have been some scary moments. Still, we're going to shepherd all the groups for as long as we still can.
The brothers really appreciate you making the sacrifice to do this. And you too, Shelley, for supporting Chris. Is everybody okay?
Banning things in general is also just overall ineffective, and we can look towards prohibition in the 30s as well as the current war on drugs as evidence of that, as well as the contrast between countries that entirely ban sex work and those that regulate it. Proper regulation is much more effective than prohibition, and again this can be seen with alcohol, sex work, and drugs. I'll be coming back to regulation in a bit when we discuss solutions. Lastly, thought crime is unethical, and actually a major problem I hold with religion as well. Implementing a system that relies on thought crime would only create the same kind of fear, lack of informed choice, and manipulation as it does with religion. Many religions utilize thought crime to stop people from questioning their beliefs or performing actions the religion deems as inappropriate. Of course, the argument could be made that religion does this generally for harmless actions, such as watching pornography or being gay, while the religious belief is not harmless. However, I don't think that there's an equal balance of reward versus benefit here. It would simply be implementing the same harm religion creates under a new name. To sum it up, banning religion is ineffective, can strengthen religious conviction, and is unethical. It neither accomplishes the goal of decreasing religiosity, nor does it eradicate the harms perpetuated by religion, as they're simply continued under different leadership. So, what is a solution then? Well, I personally hold three main ideas: education, parenting, and regulation. Starting with education, it's not uncommon for people to lose their faith after going through higher education, particularly in STEM fields. While most religious people, particularly those who oppose higher education or advocate for religious universities, attribute this to indoctrination from the left, most people who've experienced it will cite that they were either given information they previously lacked access to, or used tools that they were taught in university regarding other topics and then applied them to religion. Two examples of this are YouTuber Genetically Modified Skeptic, as well as my own dad. I'll link Drew's video about this below, as it's his story to tell, but in short form, while he was attending a Christian university, members of his family joined a cult like MLM, and he was able to utilize analytical skills he learned while in school to understand that they had been indoctrinated by this group after trying and failing to present them with evidence of the lies spread by this MLM. A parallel was seen between the reactions of people in his religious community and that of the MLM members, and he used those skills to deconstruct his own beliefs. In the case of my dad, he grew up in a small town that's almost entirely evangelical, and had been shielded from a massive amount of both scientific and just general knowledge. While attending medical school, he realized the things he was being taught there had much better explanations for them. If he asked a question, it was given an answer. If there was no answer yet, there was an admission of that as well. The people saying scientific facts that contrasted his own religious beliefs were able to answer his questions and back them up with evidence, and they were able to admit whenever the answers that he wanted didn't exist yet. Whereas the church had minimal, if any, depth to its answers. And when the answer was unknown, he was met with non-answers of, "It's in God's plan, you'll see," or "Just have faith." While obviously there are millions of people in higher education who remain religious, it's not uncommon for education to be a catalyst in someone's ability to look critically at their religion and subsequently abandon it. So, how do we create more of that? Other than free college, obviously, my personal position is that implementing these aspects into lower levels of education will give people the tools to critically assess what their parents or religious leaders are telling them, which is vital when children are the most easily indoctrinated due to their tendency to believe what's told to them by caregivers and authority figures. The American school system relies heavily on memorization, grades, and test scores. I'll link the more in-depth video on this by Zoe B., who herself is a teacher, but personally I believe moving the focus from tests and memorization to one of critical thinking, literacy in both media comprehension and science, and personal experimentation over memorization is an effective part of this solution. Middle school and high school age students should be able to understand why the paper their teacher is telling them about is true, while it's currently simply taught as, "This is just true. Remember the names of this person and the numbers on this page." They should be taught how to do the research for themselves. And while of course that is still a portion of education currently, in my experience this often boils down to don't use wikis and use a .edu or .org source only. Not, hey, is this a credible study? Is this old and out of date? Do we have new information? Questions like, what methods were implemented to come to this conclusion? Is there another method that you think could work better? Is the context in which this research was done ethical? And if not, what improvements could be made? Is there any research that conflicts with what we're discussing? These are much more involved questions that I believe a high schooler would be perfectly capable of answering if given the correct tools. They're much better than how many X subjects did Y, or who authored this paper, or what year was it authored? What equation was used to find this number? Of course, I'm not a teacher, and I'm sure that there's much more effective ways to implement the ones that I like than the way that I particularly worded them, but nonetheless, it should be making them think about the why along with the how. Obviously, these things should be implemented in a way that's age-appropriate, that students that age can properly understand and assess, as well as obviously still having a place for memorizing formulas and influential scientists. But creating an environment around learning that not only allows for agency, but teaches students how to use it, can extend to situations outside of the classroom, even if it's not a conscious use of those taught methods. My second thing is parenting. While I will note I am not a parent, nor do I ever plan to be, I feel like the things in this section are pretty basic. This essentially comes down to not indoctrinating your children, and making your best effort to avoid influencing their beliefs. There are plenty of parents who are religious who also don't force their child to attend church, and openly express that they support their child in whatever beliefs they come to on their own. While I understand, obviously, parents practicing their own religious beliefs will to some degree influence their children, especially when they're much younger, efforts can still be made, and even small changes in phrasing or approach can make a massive difference. If a child asks why a parent is performing a religious activity, explain it as, well, I believe XYZ, instead of XYZ is true, and offer a statement of acceptance that your child is allowed to come to a different conclusion if that's what they feel is right for them. This can also include educating them about other religions, which can not only be helpful in expanding their worldview beyond what mom says is the truth, but can also help them be kinder and more understanding to other kids who may be different from them or their family. If you're able to, leave your kid with a friend or babysitter while attending religious services or events, and if that's not an option, make it clear that they're not expected to participate unless they want to. Religious holidays can also be a good time to explain other beliefs. Explain why you celebrate Christmas and that some other kids celebrate Hanukkah. That some people celebrate Christmas because of the birth of Jesus and some people just do it for fun. Explain the story of Hanukkah and that some people celebrate it because of their religion, while some do it because it's important to their cultural and family identity. While I do think this aspect is harder to implement, and I don't necessarily think it's a way to prevent religiosity as a whole, I do think it removes some of the more harmful aspects of indoctrination, as well as preventing the insular worldview that many people grow up with, that their religion is the only option and it's how all people have to be. The last component is regulation. This essentially amounts to removing the special treatment received by religion, as well as stricter regulation on religious schools and homeschooling. First and foremost, coming off the back of my last video, religious organizations should be required to report their income just like every secular nonprofit. Personally, I don't think churches should be tax exempt at all unless they provide a charitable service, but I'll leave that for another video. There should not be any exemption from laws due to religious belief. This does not mean any action that's not already illegal should be made illegal, but that the defense of committing a crime may no longer be excused due to religious belief. This is mostly relevant in cases of discrimination, but nonetheless, it should not happen at all. Both religious schools and homeschooling should be held to the same standard and curriculum as public schools. No creationism textbooks. And in this ideal world, should be required to follow the same analytical and exploration-based approach I mentioned earlier over texts and memorization. Any religious-based activities, such as attending chapel or Bible classes, must be strictly optional, and no discriminatory school admissions policies or rules should be allowed due to their religious origins. And lastly, any religious iconography or language should not be included in government. No "In God We Trust" or "One Nation Under God." Government officials may also not cite religion as a reason for performing certain actions that influence their citizens, and if done, it should be investigated and reprimanded. Banning religion doesn't create a world in which the harms of religion no longer affect people. It simply reassigns them to a new group. It doesn't dismantle the belief and can even strengthen it. While I think the world would be a much better place without religion in it, approaching that by helping people work through its problems on their own and giving them informed choices and doing what we can to reduce the harm of religion through both government and our own actions is both more effective and much kinder than simply copying the actions of so many religions and forcing the opposite down their throat. That's all I got today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hadeh.
I stare at the populace in prayer.